I'm Councillor Carl Jordan, and I will be chairing this meeting this afternoon. Can I please ask to ensure that your phones are switched to silent for the duration of the meeting? And I wish to remind officers that the cameras need to be on and during the meeting so they can be seen and heard while participating in the council business this afternoon. In addition, when asked to raise your hand, if members were virtually viewing this meeting, could you raise your electronic hand? There are no members in the room, so we'll be looking at the screen for questions. We're not due for a fire drill, so if we leave by the means of an alarm, we'll try and rejoin after we've been told it's safe to return to the building. Thank you. Agenda item 2 is declarations of interest. Members, any declarations of interest this afternoon? I see none. Thank you. So moving on to agenda item 3, which are the minutes of the previous meeting. You can see the meetings which are attached to the pages 5 to 10 of your agenda packs. If you feel these minutes are an accurate record of the meetings, can I please have a proposer and a seconder? I'm happy to propose. Can I second it?
Happy to second, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Henton. Members, if you do not indicate to the contrary, I will then take that these minutes are approved.
I see no indications, Chair. The minutes are approved.
Thank you, Alison. Moving on to agenda item 4A, which is the implementation of a new emergency preparedness policy and 3 supporting strategies. These can be found on pages 11 to 178 in your agenda packs. Officers, do you have anything further to add to the report, please?
No, thank you, Chair, other than to let members know that we're joined today by Emma John, who's the Civil Protection and Preparedness Team Manager, so we'll be able to answer any questions that members may have on the documents.
Thank you, Sheila. Members, do you have any questions for officers, please?
Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Wolford is on in the room with us, and then we take Councillor Reynolds second. Thank you.
Reading the document, it seems it covers all legislation and whatever. My question was, is there a place in there for a lower level requirement so that we can identify buildings in each of our wards that will be useful in the event? From our feedback from Storm Dara, a lot of members said that they had difficulties contacting community and town councils for possible buildings where people could come for tea, coffee and advice. Do you think it might be an idea to place that somewhere in the document and actually have a list of those buildings that we have available?
So trying to think back now, as part of the emergency preparedness and resilience strategy that we've got in place to support the implementation of that policy, there's an objective in there. I think it's objective number 4, and that focuses on community resilience and looking at developing those plans with board members. And part of the plan going forward is that we will be having discussions with each elected member to try and implement some sort of planning at that level with yourselves. It won't fit into the policy just because of the nature of the policy. We want to make sure that resourcing capabilities are sort of kept official sensitive. But we will then be making sure that anything that's specific in that ward to that elected member will be shared with them and part of their own response plans for their community. So that's sort of the plan going forward for tackling that.
Okay, so there would be a kind of a liaison officer that we could, or a list or a table of buildings and contacts that we could get in touch with. Yeah,
that's the plan for it, but it'd have to be stuff that's within the community. So it's typically going to be stuff that's not within the control directly of the local authority, that would sort of maintain the side of things of rest centres instead. So we're looking at things like any sort of community buildings and stuff that yourselves might be key holders for, that you could maybe implement yourselves and notify us if you're using them, and then just inform us if you needed something a bit more advanced. And then we would have to look at whether we bring it in more sort of local authority officers and to support that or enhance it into a rest centre and that kind of thing. So yeah, hopefully that answers that.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wolford. Councillor Reynolds next, please.
Thank you. It appears great minds think alike, Councillor Wolford. One of my questions was how, the voluntary sector is mentioned in the policy. How are we linking with it? And you've indicated there's a strategy that goes with this, an action plan, etc. And And sometimes I think it's useful to consider these things together rather than seeing them in isolation, because a lot of our questions are going to be about, you know, how this is happening as opposed to the policy, given, you know, as Councillor Wolford said, Storm Dara and the impact that had on some of our communities, not all, but some. And so I wanted to ask that question, and how that then relates to, you know, I know in my community I'm involved with decisions about creating a community hub, which is a centre of community resilience that can be enabled to carry on under all circumstances, would have, you know, the facility to provide hot food, drinks, etc., warm spaces, without, you know, direct electricity, without, you know, because we had incredible problems up in our area and no real support from the council, and that came out in the briefing. So that was my first point. I've got some others.
I'll respond and then come back to the second questions.
Right. Yes, thank you, Chair. So Councillor Reynolds, I think it's the same point that Emma has just made, is that what the team will be intending to do is actually work with ward members to develop ward-specific response plans. So that would include the activity that you've just described, which I think would be very valuable activity and very valuable for us to be able to document that in your response plan. Does that help answer your question?
That does, thank you. And the second question was about the impact assessment. You know, I keep trying to take time to look at the impact assessments on these sorts of documents. It's quite confusing because you know, perhaps a bit more coordination needed. The impact assessment on the lead-in paper for the scrutiny says none necessary, and then of course the document itself has an impact assessment, so perhaps a little bit of thinking when that's being prepared more. But I do find concerns about how these are prepared and the mindset and the thinking that goes with their preparedness. This sort of thing impacts on everybody, and on page 24 I think it says something around, you know, the valleys are included, but there's nothing in the strategy or in the policy there which indicates, and it says this policy has been drawn up as a result of the feedback that has come from the post-event briefings, from this, that and the other. And yet I know that there were clear lack of issues in the valleys. So it would be nice to see in the policy note taken of, you know, of the fact that specific focus is going to be given on working with communities that are more isolated, such that they have plans that can be enacted within an emergency. Like what you've just said, it doesn't appear, you know, the impact assessment sort of, you know, waves it to one side. It's almost as if impact assessment for a lot of these reports are written just as a quick, oh, I've got to tick these boxes. And that's, in my mind, not the way we should be considering them. We should be really stopping and thinking about those impacts. And I wondered if someone could answer me that one, please.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Reynolds. I think we have to reflect on the impact assessment in light of your comments. So what we've completed is the first stage. So that's like the screening impact assessment to see whether or not we need to complete a full impact assessment. The policy and strategies that have been developed are necessarily at quite high level and county-wide. They were never intended to provide all the detail of what will happen should an emergency major incident occur. Those will be in more detailed plans that will sit under this piece of work. And those plans themselves will be subject to impact assessments as well. So I'm not dismissing the comments that you've made around the impact assessment. I think I'd need a bit of time to just consider it, have a look at it again, and maybe take some advice on it just to make sure what we've done has been sufficient. But there will be future impact assessments where necessary. So where we make other decisions that sit underneath this, they will be subject to impact assessments as well.
Chair, if I may, I'd like some reassurance really that impact assessments, that the feel that I have is that they're tick box exercises isn't actually true, that people do stop and think about them. I have asked repeatedly on reports for, not for just single phrases that say, there is no valley impact, or valleys will be taken account of, or, there is no workforce, without some thinking and some detail in there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Reynolds. We've got Noel coming in to respond to your last question.
Yeah, just a kind of general observation, Councillor Reynolds, with regards to integrated impact assessments that you go alongside every report that goes before our members and officers. I think it's a fair point you're raising with regards to maybe the quality of those integrated impact assessments. I think it does vary quite significantly across the authority, depending on who the report authors are. So, I think I'll take on board the comments you've made. I think there is a piece of work there to ensure we have good quality, robust IIAs in place of all reports. So I think that's a piece of work that we will take forward, Councillor Reynolds. Diolch.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Reynolds. Before I bring Councillor Bob Woolford back in, we're going to go to Anthony Richards, please.
Great, diolch yn fawr. Yeah, it's good to see the policy has clearly been refreshed and aligned with recognised standards, and that really does demonstrate serious commitment to resilience. But sort of following on really from what has already been said, how are we measuring our readiness to maintain critical services in major incidents? What KPIs, OKRs, what exercise results, and can we provide, if any, recent examples of business continuity or continuity tests, and what weaknesses were found in those tests, if any have been completed?
Thank you, Councillor Richards. We have a response for you.
So just using the example of business continuity, looking at service preparedness. So we're doing quite a lot of comprehensive work around that at the moment. There's a separate strategy as well for that, looking at the implementation throughout the authority. So looking at the performance side of things, we're essentially looking at asking each of the service leads to provide us with business impact assessments or analysis work, along with business continuity plans. We're then looking at that and looking at the uptake, and we're monitoring that. We're also at the moment delivering some workshops specifically to the service lead to try and sort of drive the uptake of delivering those plans and those impact analysis pieces of work. And we're sort of monitoring again who's attending that, so we can see which services have actually had that contact with us to get that support and advice. Going forward then, on the performance side of things, we're going to be setting up quarterly monitoring with each of the service leads, and we'll be feeding into sort of the heads of services and directors, essentially assessing the maturity of business continuity amongst all the services. So we'll be looking at things like whether they've got an established lead within their service for business continuity, whether they factored in certain things as part of their business continuity planning and that kind of thing. And then that will be reported on each quarter then, and then annually as well, likely to yourselves. So that you can sort of have oversight and see how mature, I suppose, the local authority's business continuity actually is. We recently had an audit carried out as part of digital services, and that did pick up that there was a need to focus on business continuity, particularly in response to cyber and cyber resilience. So that's currently a key focus when we're going out and delivering this work with each of the service leads, actually focusing more on sort of the cyber side of things. So yeah, there will be lots of activity essentially going on around business continuity at the moment, which I'm sure most of my colleagues in you have been been drawn into at some point with us as well. So I hope that answers your question.
Great, and it's answered my follow-up question, which was going to be how often was the business continuity plans being reviewed? So yeah, thank you for that.
Thank you, Councillor Richards and Emma for a response. We're going to go back to Councillor Bob Wolford in the room, please.
Yeah, sorry, just a short one coming back. You said there are plans going to go underneath this policy, more practical things. Have we a timeline for those? Because we're moving into storm season at the moment. And so in readiness for that, how soon will those things be ready?
So the local authority's already got a whole sort of host of emergency response plans in place. The ones that are directly cared for by my team, there's about 50 odd of them. The majority of ones that relate to sort of severe weather or the impacts that can be seen across the borough from severe weather have all been reviewed. So everything else is due for review now when we go into spring and stuff, as we sort of deal with sort of the more summer-based activity that can happen. So most of those plans are reviewed. The stuff to do with the ward specifically, we're likely to pick that up from the spring 2026 is where we're planning to look at that. We'll be focusing on a couple of communities in particular. We're going to be looking for a couple of case study examples, try and help drive the rest of the board members and sort of show them a best case example. But yeah, we're hoping to pick up the rest of them with the other ward members from spring. I hope that answers that question.
Thank you, Emma. I can't see any more questions online, so I don't know whether if I can ask a question of Emma. It's mindful of what Councillor Reynolds has brought up and Councillor Wolford, and that's relating to us looking for locations, possible locations in our area in case there's a sort of an incident involving masses of people, etc. If I can ask Emma, what sort of buildings would we be looking at? Community centres with perhaps a electric backup with the generators, etc., or?
That would be ideal, but we know that backup generators are obviously in short supply as we've experienced during Storm Dara. But yeah, we're going to be looking at whatever buildings are essentially available to yourselves as part of your communities. If it's anything really big scale, then it's going to come back to the local authority side of things anyway. So we'd be looking at actual rest centres in our local leisure centres and things then instead. But the idea of having sort of more local community-based stuff is just to give yourselves that hub to initially go to during an emergency. And if there just isn't a need within the community to have that bigger, wider set of response for us, because our sort of side of the response is more deal with sort of 200 persons plus. So if you're talking just a handful of people that have been evacuated from a street, having those sort of local resources available would be really, really beneficial, I think.
Thank you, Emma. Thank you, members. I can't see any more questions online. No, I can't see any. Members, I'm now going to ask you to note the reports. Thank you. Moving on to agenda item 4B, which is a capital budget quarterly monitoring 2025 to 2026. These can be found in the agenda packs on pages 179 to 199. Officers, anything further to add to the reports, please?
Just to add, Chair, that this is the Q1 capital programme monitoring report. It details the revised capital programme of £98 million for the year. The changes are all set out in the appendix to the report. And I'd be happy to try and answer any questions members may have, but just a word of caution, I'm not cited on 100% of the detail in these projects, Chair, so there may have to be some responses circulated in writing outside the meeting, but happy to help and try what I can. I've got some colleagues on the call who may help as well. So
okay, thank you.
Happy to start.
Thank you. Members, any questions, please? Councillor Percy, please.
Thank you, and apologies for not circulating questions in advance for today's meeting. My first question is on page 189, and it refers to the neighbourhood improvement programme. So it's the £2.5 million budget line. The comment there is proposals currently being developed. I wonder if who's got an update on that particular scheme. I know there's been lots of discussions, but still a bit of a lack of certainty. And I'll just I've only got one other on this report, Chair, so I'll just pick that out as well, which is on page 195, and it refers to the Milland Road footbridge and discussions ongoing. There's 100k in there. I don't know if you can give a little bit of insight as to what that was in relation to. Diolch.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Percy. So if I take the first one, the neighbourhood improvement programme. So Cabinet have already approved £500,000 of that funding to be used to refurbish play parks across the County Borough Council, and officers within the Environment Directorate are looking at potential projects for the rest of it. It was set out to be a 3-year programme, so the first £500,000 has been allocated, and reports will be coming back to members in terms of the rest of the prioritisation and timescale, etc. In terms of the Millen Road footbridge, that's around discussions that are ongoing with Network Rail about the ownership of the footbridge and the future ownership, etc. That was to do a little bit of design work on that scheme. So nothing substantial, but just to start discussions off on that proposal. If you want any more information on the latter one, I can get it from colleagues in Environment and Regen, Councillor Percy.
Happy with the response, Councillor Percy?
I'll just respond briefly, if that's okay, Chair. I will pick up the Millen Road issue, in particular, given the discussions we've had around the transport hub and some of the ambition around the railway and, you know, wider strategies for Neath. I wonder how much we're going to progress that in isolation at the moment. So I think that does need to be, you know, subject to some further discussion. And in terms of that Neighbourhood Improvement Fund, will there be a report outlining that coming, or are we going to get individual reports for calls upon the funding going forward? I'm just trying to understand the plan. Diolch.
It's not going to operate in the same way as the members' community fund used to. So it's not going to be sort of asking for each individual ward member to say, you know, allocating a sum of money to say what do you want doing. But the intention is that when we have a schedule from the Environment Directorate around what they see as being potential projects, then we will be discussing it with members. The difficulty is that a lot of the sort of projects that will want to be delivered from this programme are already ones that have been delivered through the highways programme, etc. So it's the same people and in neighbourhood management that we're calling upon for all of these initiatives. So there's a bit of a sort of a capacity issue. I know you've heard this before, but a capacity issue in terms of officers. So we wanted to get the playgrounds programme up and running and approved by Cabinet, and then work on the rest of it. So yeah, there will be reports coming back, but it won't be an open call type report.
Thank you, Councillor Percy, for your questions. Councillor Andy Richards again, please.
Yeah, diolch yn fawr, Cadeirydd. I wasn't going to ask any questions, but then one just came to me. First of all, I note we're maintaining oversight of the capital programme despite inflation and supply chain pressures. So, you know, it's a positive sign of control. But it just came to me then of, you know, what's the council doing cross-departmentally to review past capital projects and sort of capture lessons learned, so future schemes benefit from that retrospective insight. So, for example, you know, naturally we're going to have schemes that are experiencing delays or cost overturns, and you know, we could ask what actions are in place to correct this. But you know, there are things that we've delivered ahead of schedule or under budget, and we can learn from those things as well. Who you mentioned at the very beginning, no, I'm not going to be able to give you answers on specific projects or specific situations, but therefore it made me think about, you know, again, what are we doing cross-departmentally to review these and learn lessons, and think about what impact on residents or service delivery for any deferred projects as well. I know it says in the report we haven't lost money because a project's been deferred, but it does have an impact on service delivery or on residents. So
yeah, thanks for that. So I suppose I'm answering on behalf of colleagues in the Environment Directorate, really, because they will be managing both the property related and infrastructure related projects. You'll be familiar with the fact we've got some very long established members of staff in the architects team who will obviously be learning lessons all the time from the construction projects they deliver. They're now bringing new recruits through because obviously in terms of succession planning, so they're learning lessons from the more senior colleagues. As you say, in terms of impact on residents, any delay to a project has an impact. However, a lot of these things are beyond our control. The key to me, as you'd expect with my hat on, is we don't lose any money around them. We make sure we secure all the grant funding and it remains in place. But it's a really good point in terms of the fact that, you know, this is a constantly moving picture all the time. You know, with the best will in the world, there are delays in construction projects for whatever reason, but there are sometimes, as you say, where things can be brought forward. So you'll see with this report as it comes forward quarterly, some projects get pushed back, but on the plus side, some get brought forward as they get delivered earlier. So yeah, I think from an officer team, you know, that we're constantly learning lessons around delivery of these projects and programmes.
Okay, diolch yn fawr.
Diolch.
Thank you, Councillor Richards. We got Councillor Wolford in the room, please.
Thank you. My questions around the Shared Prosperity Fund grants. I'm aware that there's obviously time constraints on these grants and when the projects need to be delivered. And I'm also aware from outside that some of these projects that have been allocated funding aren't going to be delivered. What's going to happen to that funding? Will we get it back? Do we lose it and we retain it? Or do we lose it altogether if they don't come in? And if that is going to happen, when we're looking at funding in the future, and I know we don't know how those grants are going to come in the future, is it possible to be perhaps a little bit more diligent to make sure that we grant funding to the projects that are going to come in on time?
Well, again, speaking for colleagues in the Environment Directorate, at the moment, we don't expect to lose any shared prosperity funding this year, because what they've done is in effect overcommitted on the grants. So they've actually taken account of the fact they know there'll be slippage, they know that things won't get delivered. So they've overcommitted in certain areas, making sure that then as the year goes on, they can balance delivery of grants, etc., to make sure that we don't actually overspend or underspend. So, but if there was an underspend, we would lose it. It would have to go back, yes.
Right.
So there's a definite drop dead date to the 31st of March next year. But they're cognizant of that, so that's why they've over-programmed.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you, members, for your questions and officers for your answers. And now to inform members to note the report. So now we're going to move on to agenda item 4C, which is the Annual Treasury Management Quarterly Monitoring Report 2025-26. Again, these can be found on the agenda packs, page 201 to 211. Officers, do you have anything further to add to the report?
No, nothing. Thank you, Chair. It's fairly self-explanatory, so we'll move straight to questions if members have any. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, any questions, please? I can't see any, so if I can take this opportunity to ask a question. I think it was in reserve, environmental page 222, I think it was, 31,500, and it says funds for cost of a stolen chipper. Just wondering if the chipper was insured. If not, what are we doing to take ownership of thefts, please?
That's the next one.
That's the next one. Oh, sorry, apologise, sorry. Yep, so there is no further questions then, so we're going to move on to agenda item 4D, Revenue and Reserves Quarterly Monitoring Report 2025-26, pages 213, 239 of the agenda pack. Again, officers, have anything further to add, please?
Again, just to add, Chair, this is the Revenue Budget Monitoring Report to the end of June, where we project up to where we think we'll be as March 26. At this point in time, back in June, we were projecting a £3.6 million overspend. The vast majority of that being within social services, housing and community safety, where some of their transformation programme savings have slipped from this year to next year, which means that they're reporting an overspend this year. But they're confident that those savings will be delivered in their entirety over the course of the next couple of years. So that's the position as of June, Chair. Obviously, directors will be working to improve that position as the year goes on, with a view of getting towards a balanced budget by the end of March 26. So again, happy to take questions, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Hugh. Sean, before I bring you in, then can I ask him to answer the question I just posed in there, please, regards to the stolen shipper? Thank you.
I will, if I can desperately find the paragraph you're looking at, Chair. So where are we? Page 222.
I think it was 222. Let me just go onto my screen as well. 223, is it? Just mark one. No. Apologies.
That's okay.
I got a second question. It's just
224, Chair.
224, is it? Sorry.
Yeah. So it's a contribution from reserves of £31,500 to fund the costs of the stolen shipper, yes. I would have assumed it would be insured, so I'll have to go back and check that, through Chair, and provide you with a response afterwards, so I don't know.
Thank you. And also on page 224, it says just a typo. It says that we're going to fund future COTS. Excuse me, costs.
That would be, yeah, thank you, Chair. Noted, COTS. No, we're going to provide COTS. Thank you.
Thank you for waiting, Sean. You're next, please. Thank you.
No problem, Cadeirydd, no problem. Yeah, a few queries on this, and again, here I appreciate I may not be able to pick them all up. On page 219, in relation to the Princess Royal Theatre overspend, the projected overspend there in terms of it being closed during the refurbishment works, there's a reference to officers working to minimise it by exploring temporary redeployment. Do we know if any of that has progressed since the date of this report too?
Yes, so we've been able to move one member of staff onto a grant-funded programme. It's reduced that slightly, but certainly not to get the whole overspend down, because obviously the staff are contracted to work, so they'd be put to other uses, but obviously the income isn't there from the theatre to offset the costs as it would be otherwise.
Okay, great. Do you mind if I continue my questions, Chair?
Yeah, go on, Sean. Thank you.
So next is page 221 in relation to Tremor overspend, which is the unachieved vacancy factor. That one looks like a saving that's not going to be achieved going forward. I don't know if you know anything about that one in particular, but that feels like yeah, something that we're not going to manage in terms of required staffing levels.
Yeah, so what we did with the vacancy factor a number of years ago was to apply a vacancy factor to every service directorate. That then has got allocated out to each individual service within a directorate in effect, but the onus on the corporate director is to actually achieve the overall vacancy factor. So whilst it's not being achieved within Tremor, because obviously if you've got a vacancy, you've got to staff it, you can't just have vacancies. Across the whole social services, housing and community safety directorate, Mr. Jarrett is achieving his 5% factor. It's just we have to report it here because it's a significant variance against that Tremor budget. I hope that makes sense, Sean.
Yeah. I mean, it explains it. Whether it makes complete sense in terms of how it's been presented, I suppose, is another matter. But
yeah, I take your point there. Yeah.
So the next thing I wanted to flag up was on page 222. And it references under risks for social services, the financial assessments team having issues and delays in respect to their IT system, and there might not be comprehensive data available. Are you able to explain what elements of the budget that data refers to in terms of that risk?
I would think it relates to where we have placement costs externally, which are maintained through this new IT system that's been developed. And as you know, across Wales, there's a problem with social services IT systems, and we've been one of the first to bring this state-of-the-art system on board. But with any system, there's teething problems. But I'm going to say placement costs, but I will provide again outside the meeting a proper written response from somebody who knows far more than me on that, Councillor Percy. And I'm hoping Alison's making a note of all these written responses I need to provide. And would nag me to provide them as well.
Yeah, no, that would be really helpful, because obviously I know some of these budgets are particularly large and volatile as well. So it'd be useful to understand the scale of that risk.
Yeah.
So the next two are just on the same page as well under environment. Car parking is there with the overspend, which has been sitting there for a little while now, isn't it? And I mean the comment refers to that in the sense that it's never reached the required level. Are we reviewing that sort of base budget going forward, given that doesn't seem to be achievable?
Yeah, I think this is a comment that you've mentioned before, and regarding the building maintenance one too, down from there. So yes, I think the plan is for when we set the budget next year, we will be looking to actually right-size those two budgets. The car parking one, as it's referenced, a number of years ago, we just overstated the amount of income we thought could be generated. clearly issues on the seafront have affected that as well. We won't go into that today. And in terms of building maintenance, again, you know, I think Councillor Richards earlier referenced sort of inflation cost on materials, etc. We failed a number of years ago to identify the significance of that. So we will be looking for next year's budget to actually put those on a better footing, so we don't report on a quarterly basis in the next financial year, although you will probably see for the remainder of this year, the same thing's been reported in Q2 and Q3.
Yeah, no, appreciate that. That's great that we're considering that. I think it'll just make it easier for all of us to identify performance in those areas as well, won't it? So yeah. I wanted to just pick up on the waste disposal one as well. And I when I was previously the scrutiny chair for this area, I know we've had a lot of discussions with Mike around, again, volatility of income from you know, recycling and etc. This does seem to be quite a significant overspend, and I'm wondering if we've got an indication as to whether this is going to be a long-term issue, or whether this is something that's maybe a temporary spike, just in terms of, again, budget planning going forward, and whether there needs to be significant changes in that budget. Diolch.
That's a really good question. As you say, this service area, especially what they call this off-take waste contracts, they do vary significantly depending, obviously, on supply and demand. So this is one we are watching again for next year, because I'm loath to permanently increase a base budget for something that could be a temporary increase due to supply and demand. So, you know, as we get through quarters 2 and 3, we'll be keeping an eye on that. You know, there's some things like the supplies and services on building maintenance, well, they're never going to go back down because they just stepped inflation. They're not going to suddenly drop. Whereas this one is very much more volatile, as you referenced, because you know from your scrutiny chair days. So we will be keeping an eye on it. But I say I'm not minded to permanently increase base budgets where, you know, next year it could come back down and Nicola wouldn't be so keen to give me the money back. So that's where we are with that.
Okay, appreciate that. Chair, I've got one last comment and point to make, which I given that there's no one here from environment, it might be one to take away. The environment section in this particular report doesn't have a section on risks, so there is a section under social services and education, but there isn't anything under the environment section. So I was just wondering whether there's a reason why that's not included, whether there are no risks, or whether that's just an omission. But I appreciate might not get that answer today. Diolch.
No, I think I can answer that. That's going to be an oversight, because there will be multiple risks within the Environment Directorate that they'll be managing. So that's something that's not been included. We try and make sure that every directorate's got a risk section in future.
Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Percy. Thank you, Hugh, for your answers. Councillor Reynolds, please.
Thank you. I don't think, I've just looked down the list of people who are in attendance. I'm not sure there's anybody here from education either to answer questions, so I suspect I may get more detailed answers after the meeting. But I've got 2 queries, and that's on page 219, home to school transport, which I know we've discussed over the last year quite a few times. There are great concerns here that there is still, you know, a shortfall building. I understand that, you know, from this, that there's an internal working group been established. Presumably that working group is between the 2 departments and has someone senior enough overseeing it, because that was one of the issues last time, that they are actually going to make some headway and come up with some reasonable ideas. And I'm hoping that it might involve someone from finance as well. Can anybody give me information on that at all?
Yeah, I can kick off, Councillor Reynolds. So just in terms of the 520,000 overspent, so within the budget projections for this year, we'd assume we were going to save £350,000. Well, that hasn't happened, so therefore that's contributed towards the £520,000. In terms of the internal working group, my colleague, Noel Wynn, who's the Corporate Director of Strategy and Corporate Services, is actually chairing that. So he'll be able to provide you with more information around the work to date and how they intend to take that forward. So I'll hand straight across to Nolwenn for a minute.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Reynolds. Yeah, so I'm leading the reset, if you like, of the homeschool travel project as a strategic director. I have representatives, senior representatives on that group from the transport team, the environment directorate, colleagues from education, so the heads of service there, together with colleagues from finance and procurement and legal as well. So it's a kind of a cross directorate project team. The intention is to effectively put that project on a different footing to what it was previously. So we have identified key areas of work that do need to continue, and there will be a report coming before, firstly, the strategic leadership team in early November for discussion, then on to colleagues at the CMB meetings, but we will share that with members as well, Councillor Reynolds. So it's an attempt to address some of the areas that the previous project was meant to address, but it may be taking a slightly different approach. So we'll be making that very clear to members in due course. Diolch.
Thank you for that, Nolwenn.
Councillor
Really
Reynolds.
pleased to hear. Really pleased to hear. And look forward to seeing the outcome of those discussions. It's where it always should have been, being undertaken internally and sorted out internally, my feeling is. I have to say that. We've got the second one also on 219 is about the school budgets, inevitably. School budgets, 2.6 million in deficit at the end of last year, down from the anticipated over 7 million. This was due to the additional, so we found out, was due to the additional funding available from Welsh Government. The anticipation this year coming out in this paragraph is that because of schools having to set budgets that meet their needs, there could be a further 6.1 million needed from reserves. It's very concerning to see this. 8.7 million predicted overspend at the end of the year. It's a matter for concern. There is a paragraph or a few paragraphs on risk at the end of the education section. That's not mentioned as one of them. And it concerns me, how we're dealing with this, and do we need something much more intense to look at this situation? I'm aware as well, and it's not, working with schools to look at their deficit budgets and look at recovery plans. Schools aren't in a position to do much about this themselves. They've got to meet the needs in their communities. So what are we doing? I'm aware that we're looking at a review of school funding overall, but that just appears to be focusing on ALN. What is being undertaken to look at this problem in the round?
I'll try and answer as much as I can, but again, if there's additional information that Andrew and Rhiannon can provide subsequently, then probably more appropriate that they do so. But the way I describe the situation in schools, Councillor Reynolds, you've got two issues. One being the size of the actual cake, which is the delegated schools budget itself, and one being how you cut it up, which is the school funding formula. So I think we as an officer team recognise that over the years there's been insufficient investment into the delegated schools budget, especially in around the cost of teaching assistants for children with ALN. So we know there's a gap, a significant gap between what it costs schools to deliver TAs for ALN, and as you say, if they've got a what I would call a statement of special educational needs back in my day, but an IDP now, which dictates that provision's got to be provided, the school has no choice but to provide it. But there's a gap between what we fund and what we provide. So we recognise that, and again, as part of our budget planning going forward, we're looking to see how we can address that. The other part of it is how you slice the cake, which is the school's funding formula review. So the initial proposals, as you mentioned, are around the ALN element of the formula, because that's where we recognise that the greatest issue is at the moment. And I'm sure once that piece of the work is concluded, then Andrew and his team will move on to the rest of the funding formula. So that's about the size of the answer that I can give you from my knowledge of the situation. But again, I'll ask Andrew or Rhiannon probably more appropriately, just to give you and other members of the committee an update as to what their plans are around the further review of the formula. That would be helpful.
That would be very helpful. But also, can I ask that this is included in the analysis of risks, because it is a big one?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think just to touch on that, I suppose, whereas Wales differs to England, in England, deficit school reserves don't form part of the council's overall finances. In effect, in Wales they do, so it is certainly a risk. And it's something, obviously, as a Section 151 officer, is very much on my radar. Thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you, Hugh.
Thank you, Hugh. Thank you, Noel, for your responses. Members, thank you for your questions. There's no more questions or anyone indicating to ask a question online. None in the room. So I'm going to ask you to note the report. Thank you. And moving on to agenda item 4E, which is a corporate self-assessment for 2024 to 2025. Pages 241, sorry, to 286 of the agenda packs. Officers, do you have anything further to add to the report, please?
Nothing further to add, Chair, but happy to take questions. Diolch.
Thank you, Owen. Members, any questions for officers, please?
Oh, sorry.
Councillor Percy, thank you.
Apologies, Chair, a little slow, put my hand up there. Right, yes, a couple of questions from me on this one. On page 256, it picks up some recommendations from the service user perspective work done by Audit Wales, and there's three recommendations there, which it says continue to be progressed. I wondered, Noel, if you've got any commentary, particularly around understanding service user perspective for officers and senior leaders, and if you can give a bit of commentary on what work we've done to improve that, please. Diolch.
Yeah, diolch, Cynghorydd Percy, am y cwestiwn. Thanks for the question, Councillor Percy. So when we took the corporate strategy through this committee and council for approval, you will have noted that we'd included this time around a number of service user perspective measures and indicators within that corporate strategy. We also brought a report before this committee, or it was circulated certainly to members of this committee and to all members, the resident survey that the WLJ were undertaking. We signed up as an authority through that. That was conducted, I think it began on June the 13th. It was conducted kind of over the couple of the summer months. A few weeks back, we had the results of that survey through. The team have been very busy analysing that data, and there will be a report going to the strategic leadership team next week, and then that will come through the process, Councillor Percy. So we will be bringing it here for your benefit as scrutiny members. I think what it does indicate is our desire to ensure that we do include, moving forward, a greater understanding of what our service users think of the services we provide. Clearly, the survey is broader than just our services directly. I think it will give us a very good insight into the areas that maybe we need to focus our attention on in terms of service improvement, and maybe even the areas that we haven't yet considered as an authority that we need to focus upon. So, I'm sure when we bring that information before you, it'll provide plenty of content for discussion, Councillor Percy. But on a positive, it's the right way forward, and we will already be working on what that survey looks like next year when we go out as well. So it will be an annual survey. We'll continually be able to monitor then our progress against some of the asks of the community. Diolch.
Thank you, Noel, and thank you for your question, Councillor Percy. I can't see any online. I'm happy to propose this agenda item. Can I have a second? Oh, sorry. Okay, come in, John.
My apologies. It's a brief question for Hugh in relation to the reference to the medium-term financial plan, which is on page 283 as part of the action plan. That's been sitting, from our self-assessment for quite a while now, and we've got a March 26 date in for that. And I was just curious whether we're on track to develop that medium-term financial strategy for March 26. Diolch.
Yes, there will be a report coming here and to Cabinet before March 26 on that. Councillor Percy. Diolch.
You okay with that, John?
Yes, happy. Thank you.
Thank you. So there's no further questions online, so I'm happy to propose this agenda item. Can I have a seconder, please?
A second, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Wolford. Can members please indicate if they wish to abstain from the vote, please?
I see no abstentions, Chair.
Thank you, Alison. Members, if you do not indicate to the contrary, I will take it that this recommendation is supported.
I see no indications to the contrary, Chair. The recommendation is supported.
Thank you, Alison. Moving on to agenda item 4F, which is the draft Neath, Talbot and Third Sector Compact. These can be found on pages 287 to 309 in the agenda pack. Officers, do you have anything further to add to the report, please?
Nothing to add, Chair, but happy to take questions. Diolch.
Thank you, Noreen. Members, over to you for questions. Thank you. Councillor Percy, please.
Yeah, just curious really what's changed in this version compared to previous versions of this document. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Percy. I think when we started working with the sector, with CVS and the wider third sector on this, we were really keen that this revised compact builds on the many years of partnership working, and especially is brought up to date in terms of the challenges that we're now facing, which are set out in the revised document: cost of living crisis, the financial challenges, the recent changes at Tata. A key change in there is we always had a shared vision, but we've also included in this document a set of shared objectives as well. So that's the key change in this document. Is that okay, Councillor Percy?
Yeah, that's helpful too.
Thank you for your response, Karen. Councillor Percy, thank you for your question. Again, I'm happy to propose this agenda item. I'm looking for a seconder, please.
Second, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Wolford. Can members please indicate if they wish to abstain from the vote, please?
I see no abstentions, Chair.
Members, if you do not indicate to the contrary, then I will take it that this recommendation is supported.
I see no indications to the contrary, Chair. The recommendation is supported.
Thank you, Alison. Moving on to agenda item 5, to consider items from the Scrutiny Forward Work Programme. There are no public items to consider from the Scrutiny Programme today. So agenda item 6A, which is Heads of Service Business Plans, Performance Monitoring 2025 to 2026, Quarter 1. Again, these are found on pages 311 to 381 of the agenda pack. Officers, do you have anything further to add to the report, please?
Nothing further to add to the report, but all heads of service here to take any questions, Chair. Diolch.
Thank you, Noreen. Members, do you have any questions for officers, please? No? No questions. Thank you very much. Members, I'm going to ask you again to note the report. Agenda item 6B is the corporate plan 2024 to 2027, working towards a more prosperous, fairer and greener NPT. It's the annual report of 2024 to 2025. And is again found on pages 383 to 523 of the agenda pack. Officers, do you have any further to add to this report?
Nothing further to add, Chair, but again, happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Noreen. Members, any questions, please? No? Again, I'm happy to Councillor Reynolds, sorry, come in last minute. Thank you.
Well, I wondered whether this was the convenient time just to make the point that, there may have been questions if there had been adequate time to do the volume of reading that this meeting and the papers for it put in front of us. So, it is really difficult when you get this volume and large documents that have to be gone through in detail. And I just wanted to make that point. It may have been more possible to scrutinise these things properly as they should be if there'd been ways of spreading these out a little more. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Reynolds. Owen?
Yeah, only to add, I guess it's a perfect storm when we get to these times of year when we bring it through our annual reports, combined with some of the quarterly reporting as well. So I agree with Councillor Reynolds. There's a significant amount of documentation there to read. But what I would say, if members do have any questions when they've gone through the documentation, more than happy to take them at any time, Councillor Reynolds, if you have any queries. Diolch.
Thank you, Norwin. Thank you, Councillor Reynolds. I can't see any further questions online. I'm happy to propose the agenda item. Can you have a seconder, please?
Happy to second, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Wolford. Can members please indicate if they wish to abstain from the vote?
There's no abstentions, Chair.
Thank you, Alison. Members, if you do not indicate the contrary, then I will take it that this recommendation is supported.
I see no indications, Chair, so the recommendation is supported.
Thank you, Alison. Moving on to agenda item 6C, which is Compliments and Complaints Annual Report 2024 to 2025, pages 525, 548 on the agenda box. Officers, do you have any further to add to the report?
Nothing to add to the report, Chair, but happy to take any questions. Diolch.
Thank you, Norwin. Members, any questions, please? Councillor Percy, please.
Yeah, just a general question really for you know, there's some commentary in the report around efforts we've made to better record compliments and complaints at different parts of the council, which we've put down to some of those figures increasing slightly. Is that work still ongoing, or are we confident now that departments across the council are recording these things consistently and accurately? Diolch.
Diolch, Cynghorydd Percy, am a question. Thanks for the question. So that work is ongoing. You will be aware, or went to governance audit recently, whereby internal audit had undertaken a review of our complaints and compliments process and how it was being adhered to, if you like, by all directorates. And that did indicate some recommendations, and we have put an action plan in place to address those recommendations. One of them is to ensure we have far better consistency and approach to how we handle complaints. There is a desire to look at some more central triaging of complaints, or sometimes they are met in terms of with service requests as well. So I think, in answer to your question, Councillor Percy, that work is ongoing in order that we strengthen our approach to handling complaints, ensuring that we have greater openness and transparency, and I'm sure we will see those figures increase as we gain that consistency across all directorates. But that is a good thing, and I think what will be important as well is then we learn the lessons from those complaints. So if there are trajectories or trends that we're picking up on from the complaints data, analysing that and then coming up with some service improvements will be key as well. So it is ongoing, Councillor Percy. Diolch.
Thank you, Norwin. Councillor Percy, do you want to come back in, please?
Yeah, briefly, if that's okay. No, thanks for that, Norwin. Yeah, I mean, this goes back to that service user perspective element as well, doesn't it? And where we're capturing some of these things. And I know a few of my residents have always had a little bugbear around that they feel like they've made a complaint, but they know it gets logged as a service request, and then we are missing opportunities to learn those lessons, as you've said. So I know we do have to be careful around perhaps vastly inflating complaint figures, but your point is correct around making sure we're able to learn lessons and patterns are not being buried within service requests. So I think if we can achieve that would be really useful. But I think this kind of links in with the service user perspective work as well, in terms of understanding those experiences. But no, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Percy. Thank you, Norwin. I can't see any further questions. Members, again, I'll ask you to note the report. So moving on to agenda item 6D, which is the Ombudsman Annual Report, pages 549 to 569. Your agenda pack. Officers, do you have anything further to add, please?
Nothing further, thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Sorry, members, do you have any questions? No. Again, members, I'm going to ask you to note the reports. Moving on to agenda item 7, which is the selection of items for future scrutiny. Pages 571 to 588. To go through the forward work programme and add any further items which members may wish to consider. Alison, do you want to give us any updates, please?
So members have had the chance to look at the forward work programme and have given an indication that they wish to call for scrutiny. Going to Cabinet on the 26th of November is the Let's Talk Living in MPT Resident Survey 2025. So they wish to call that for scrutiny on possibly the 4th of December. And they've also given an indication that they wish to call the Strategic Risk Register Q2 update. And that will be asked to be called on the 15th of January. I've also been notified of 2 further additional reports, Chair. The third sector grant scheme outcome of review and interim arrangements for 26-27. If members wish to give an indication if they wish to call that for scrutiny. And also a further report, the draft MPT performance panel assessment scoping document as well. So members need to provide an indication to call that for scrutiny as well, Chair.
Thank you, Alison. Councillor Percy.
Yeah, just in relation to third sector grants, I mean, we've had some detailed discussions on those in this committee previously, so I certainly support bringing that to a future meeting.
Thank you for that, Councillor Percy.
Take the forward work programme and then serve it as necessary to members, Chair.
Thank you, Alison. Moving on to agenda item 8, which are any urgent items at the discretion of the chairperson pursuant to section 100 BA 6B of the Local Government 1972 as amended. There are no urgent items. Agenda item 9, access to meetings. Access to meetings to resolve to exclude the public for the following items pursuant to section 100A 4 and 5 of the Local Government Act 1972 and the relevant exempt paragraphs for part 4 of section 12A to the above act.
So, Chair, if you could propose that and have a seconder, please, and then take a vote to members to agree.
Thank you, Alison. I'm happy to propose that we exclude the public. Can I have a seconder, please?
Second, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Wilford. Agenda item 10A.
Can I just confirm?
Oh, sorry,
Chair,
Alison,
just
sorry.
confirm there are no abstentions to that, Chair. If members do not indicate the contrary, Chair, then I presume everyone's accepting to go into private. I see no indications, Chair, so I'll just stop the recording and confirming that's been